One summer evening in 2018, my partner, my stepdad, and I were driving near my parents' house when we passed an old, abandoned factory. It had been sitting there for as long as I could remember, its skeletal remains a haunting landmark. On a whim, we decided to explore it. My stepdad, always acting on impulse, pulled over without hesitation. It didn't take long to find a way inside. The place was in complete ruin, walls crumbling, windows shattered, and most of the roof missing. The only real obstacle was a doorway partially blocked by debris, which we quickly cleared. The moment we stepped through, the air changed. Despite it being the height of summer, the temperature inside was freezing. And I don't mean just slightly chilly, it felt like the dead of winter. It wasn't the damp, musty cold you'd expect from an abandoned building. In fact, with so many holes in the walls and roof, it shouldn't have been that cold at all. The deeper we ventured, the stranger things felt. Rusted metal and broken machinery were scattered across the factory floor, remnants of a past life frozen in time. My partner and stepdad moved ahead while I lingered behind, sifting through old cabinets. What I found made the whole place even more unsettling. Folders full of untouched worker IDs, outdated order sheets from the late 90s and early 2000s, all seemingly abandoned in a hurry. Some shipments had been packed and ready to go, yet they had never been sent. "That's weird," my stepdad muttered when I showed him. The factory looked like it had been abandoned for decades, yet the most recent date I found was from 2002, just 16 years ago. Could a place really decay this fast? That's when the feeling crept in. It was beyond just unease or paranoia. It was the primal, gut-wrenching sensation of being watched. No, not just watched. Hunted. Like something unseen was lurking, waiting for us to leave. My skin crawled. My instincts screamed at me to get out. I turned to my partner and stepdad. "Do you feel that?" They did. Without hesitation, we agreed it was time to leave. Nothing had moved. We had heard no strange sounds. Yet, we all felt the same intense dread, as if some invisible force had its eyes locked onto us. We hurried back to the car. As we pulled away, my partner and I instinctively glanced back toward the entrance, where we had just been standing minutes before. A figure stood in the doorway. At first glance, it looked human, but something was off. Its shape was distorted, almost unnatural, as if it should be a person but wasn't. It didn't move. It only stood there, staring. My stepdad, focused on the road, hadn't noticed. But my partner and I locked eyes at the same time, both realizing we had seen the exact same thing. It wasn't our imagination. We never went back to that factory, but every time I drive past it, that feeling returns. The cold, the unseen presence, and that figure watching from the shadows. I don't know what was in there that night, but I know one thing for sure. Something never left that factory. A few days ago, something happened that still has me shaken to my core. I work in construction, mostly from the office, but occasionally I go into the field. On this particular day, my team had the opportunity to walk through an old office building scheduled for demolition. The structure was massive, and before we began, we were given strict rules. No phones, no pictures, no distractions. Only walkie-talkies for communication. Safety gear on, we followed our boss and the site manager as they inspected the upper floors, leaving the rest of us free to explore the lower levels. That's when things got weird. One of my co-workers, Brian, got a bloody nose after some harmless roughhousing. My friend Jane and I led him to an old bathroom to clean up. We shoved a wad of paper towels at him and ran the faucet, thankful the water hadn't been shut off yet. Then, someone knocked on the door. I assumed it was one of our co-workers messing with us. "Very funny," I called out, but when I tried to open the door, it wouldn't budge. It was jammed. I pulled harder, but it was stuck tight. Panic started creeping in. Then, without warning, the bathroom stall doors slammed shut, one after another, with such force that the echoes shook the room. Then, the lights went out. Pure blackness. That's when we lost it. Jane screamed. Brian cursed, backing up against the wall. My pulse pounded in my ears as I clawed at the door, my voice rising in panic. The air inside had turned ice cold, thick with something I couldn't explain. And then I felt it. A hand. It wasn't just a light touch. It was crawling up the back of my hard hat. Slow, deliberate, sticky. I ripped my helmet off and flung it to the floor. The sensation stopped instantly, but we were still trapped in the darkness. Just when I thought I would pass out from fear, the doors suddenly burst open, and our co-workers were there, wide-eyed and shouting. "What the hell happened?" one of them demanded. We stumbled out, breathless, trying to explain, but we weren't making any sense. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold on to my gear. Later, after we had calmed down, we learned the others had experienced something too. They had been wandering in another part of the building when they spotted a figure darting between two cubicles. Thinking it was one of us, they called out, but no one answered. Then, the lights started flickering, and that was when they heard the stall doors slamming from the bathroom. By the time they reached us, they swore they hadn't been anywhere near the door, meaning whoever or whatever had locked us and wasn't them. Our boss, skeptical but slightly unnerved, checked the bathroom afterward. The only thing out of place was the blood Brian had left in the sink. Nothing else. No signs of forced entry. No one else was inside. No explanation. I haven't been the same since. Even at home, I refuse to use the bathroom alone. Every time I close a door, I feel like something is standing just outside waiting, and I never want to set foot in that building again. In 2018, my cousin and I set out for one of our usual photography road trips. Long drives, music blasting, and scouting for interesting places to explore. That day, we stumbled across an abandoned barn. It was old and weathered but still standing strong. And to our surprise, there were no trespassing signs in sight. It was also for sale, though something about it felt off. Curiosity got the best of us, so we decided to take a look inside. At first, it seemed like your typical abandoned structure. Peeling paint, scattered debris, and the faint scent of mildew. But when we wandered into the basement, the vibe shifted. Among the dust and decay, we found something strange. Children's clothes, tiny dresses and shoes, stuffed animals, and old furniture, all left to rot beneath the barn. My cousin and I exchanged uneasy glances. There was no logical reason for those things to be here. Behind the barn stretched an endless cornfield, the stalks swaying in the breeze. Wanting to capture the eerie beauty of the scene, we stepped outside to snap some photos. I framed the barn perfectly with the towering corn stalks, the golden light of the setting sun giving it an almost dreamlike quality. Then, on our way back to the car, I noticed something in the dirt. A bone. It was partially buried, the white edges poking through the soil. At first, I told myself it had to be from an animal. But as I crouched down for a better look, my stomach twisted. It wasn't alone. More bones were scattered nearby. Some larger, others small, but all eerily human-like. Panic surged through me. I called out to my cousin, who hurried over. As we started sifting through the dirt, we found even more. A fibula, a femur, bones that were too big to belong to a deer or any other common animal. My heart pounded. My instincts screamed at me to leave, but we knew this wasn't something we could ignore. We had to call the police. Sitting in the car, we waited in tense silence until the officers arrived. When they did, we led them straight to the bones. They were skeptical at first, assuming it was a dumped animal carcass. Then I found the rib cage. The moment I held it up, their demeanor changed. The joking stopped. They exchanged uneasy glances and told us they needed to call in a forensic team. We left after that, shaken and unsure of what we had just uncovered. For weeks, I watched the news, waiting for updates. But there was nothing. No reports. No follow-ups. It was as if it had never happened. I don't know if they found something or if they covered something up. All I know is that I wish we had never set foot in that barn. Because whatever was buried there, someone didn't want it to be found.